I'm lucky nowadays to have had quite literally thousands of game audio students from all over the world. Whether it be from my online courses or from my time as a game audio professor here in Seattle, I have the privilege of being able to hear from up-and-comers in the game audio world all the time. And with over a decade of experience in this field, there's something I hear coming up from up-and-comers all the time, over and over again. People are trying to do everything. They're trying to become composers, they're trying to become sound designers, they're trying to learn sword fighting and voice acting and alligator wrestling, all at once in an attempt to get a job. Alligator wrestling is real, by the way, look it up. All these skills and all these efforts are to serve one purpose, to get that fabled game audio career. And after all, we think that if we do more things, we're going to be more valuable to people, and thus we are going to end up getting a job much, much faster. But ultimately, that isn't the case at all. This attempt of trying to be all things to all people all the time actually holds people back in their careers beyond a certain point. And in this video, I want to go into some points and tell you why that may be the case for you. The first point I want to talk about is that you can't get good at everything all at once. You all know that the amount of time it takes to get good at anything is astronomical, and the musicians, especially watching this, know how long it takes to get good at just one instrument. It can take decades of experience just to get that level of skill. And yet here we are, trying to pursue multiple things all at the same time, thinking that it'll lead us to the career that we ultimately want. Unfortunately, things don't really work out that way. Sure, you can get good at all the things you want to get good at eventually, but ultimately we need to start with just one core skill to focus on. After all, if you are a bad sound designer who learns to code, you'll still lose out on every sound design gig that a good sound designer would get who doesn't know how to code at all. So my first recommendation is to lean into one core skill. I see so many composers trying to force themselves to learn sound design simply so that they can get that fabled game audio job. They might even hate sound design, but they think doing the composer and sound designer route is going to help them in the end. But ultimately, all they end up as is a mediocre composer and a mediocre sound designer getting gigs that don't really get them to the next level. Think of it this way. If you are looking for a sound designer, are you going to pick the mediocre one, or are you going to pick the really good one who is focused on it and actually wants to do it? Exactly. So when you are someone who tries to do everything, you are actually appealing to no one. But don't take my word for it. Let's take an example in the real world to demonstrate this. Now, if we were to take a gander at my kitchen drawer, you would see the standard array of implements. You'll see forks and spoons and knives in there, but you'll see a distinct lack of sporks. I don't own any sporks, and I don't know anyone who does have an array of sporks in their kitchen drawer. But why not litter our homes with this fabled spork? It can do everything. It can poke food, it can kinda cut food, and it can kinda dig food too. Well, as I'm sure you've noticed, sporks are garbage, and they're really only useful in situations where you have nothing else or you need only that thing for when you're traveling or camping or something like that. So even though it can do everything, it's not what we want. Now I'm sure there's some weirdo named Todd out there who's gonna post in the comments with a 30-page diatribe about their massive spork collection, but that's not most people. Now, aside from Todd, if you're not using a spork for everything, why would your clients want to hire a spork for their... You get the analogy, you understand what I mean. People don't necessarily want someone who can do it all. They want someone specific who can solve their very specific problem. Now, something to keep in mind is uniqueness. Now, if doing everything is harming our career, will doing less things actually help it? Generally speaking, yes. The more specific you are in what you do, the more unique you become, and the more you stand out. Pretty much every up-and-coming composer and sound designer tells me that they do absolutely everything and they're just looking for some sort of gig. But if you're just a standard composer and sound designer who works on absolutely everything, then you just kind of blend in with everyone else and you become very forgettable very quickly. And from the point of view of someone who hires audio people on a semi-regular basis, if I see someone who's trying to do too many things all at once, I actually turn their application down instantly because I know they're not going to be as focused as the people I want to hire. But if you told me that you're an orchestral composer who works specifically on single-player indie narrative games, we'd have a lot to talk about. I might not have work for you right away, but if some sort of gig comes my way that I know would work for you, I'd be able to actually recommend that project to you because I know very specifically what you like to work on. Ultimately, the more specific you are, the more easy you are to be remembered and recommended for work. But Akash, you comfortable warm blanket draped atop a traditional bread pudding, you say. What about working in indie games? Don't they need someone who can do everything all the time, all at once? And the answer is sort of. Learning these skills, like composing and sound designing all at once, can be great if you're doing it just for the sake of doing it. For example, if you're a composer who knows a little bit about sound design, you'll be able to talk to other sound designers in your department or at future jobs much easier. If you're a sound designer who knows a little bit about code, it might be a little bit easier to talk to other people in other departments. Nothing wrong with that. And at the very beginning of your career, you'll likely need to do a little bit of everything just to see where your strengths are. You might not even know if you like sound design or music more and need to do a little bit of both. And for the early projects that can't afford to hire a composer and a sound designer separately, you might need to wear multiple hats at once. But after a while of trying stuff and figuring out what you like and where your strengths are, it's a really good idea to specialize a little bit more. And as you focus on what you want to be doing more and more over time, the clients will come knocking on your door for that one specific thing that you like to do. In fact, there's even an unspoken rule in the world of AAA game audio hiring. You'll see a lot of jobs out there for sound designers at these big companies, and a lot of people apply to them with the title composer/sound designer on the resume. This may seem like a completely harmless thing when you're applying for a sound design position, but what ends up happening is that the hiring managers will see composer/sound designer and then toss your resume out the window instantly. This doesn't happen at every company, it's not for every single role, but it does apply to a lot of companies and a lot of sound designer positions. They don't want to hire a composer who's just doing sound design to get a job. They want to hire someone who's actually in it for that specific thing. Why choose someone mediocre when you can choose someone who actually wants to do the thing? Now, there are exceptions to all of this, but generally speaking, I recommend most people, after they get some experience, focus on just one thing. And for example, if you're a sound designer who doesn't want to do music, find a friend who is a composer and work with them consistently across multiple projects. You don't need to do everything. You can actually pass that work on to other people as well. And the thing you'll notice as you specialize more and more over the course of your career is that you'll notice that the amount of people who just focus on one thing are very rare. And that's the reason that a lot of these job postings for sound designers at AAA companies stay up for so long. It's hard to find someone who's willing to just do one core thing. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't mean you need to quit all the other things that you like to do. You might like composing and sound designing and all the other things equally right now. And that's totally okay. But when people ask you what you do or look at your website or your demo reel, it's generally speaking a good idea to focus on a core set of skills that you can help clients with, as opposed to just overloading them with everything that you can kind of do. So if you're in the early days of your career, then yes, keep trying everything, keep seeing what works, keep seeing what you like. But if you're getting even a little more advanced, it's time to start focusing, because that's where the clients start to really come in. The more you niche down and the more you focus, the more unique you become. And the more unique you become, the more work comes your way. And as the old saying goes, when you cater to everyone, you appeal to no one. Keep that in mind as your career grows.